can this shoe really handle the rigors of road ultra running and go for hundreds of miles at a time? Meet the Mount to Coast R1. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and this is Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be talking about the Mount to Coast R1. If this is your first time watching my videos, you may notice that there are some timestamps in the description below. Feel free to jump around to the different aspects of the shoes as I review them, but if you do so, I do ask you the favor that you please come back and watch the full video when you get the chance, as I put a lot of work into these reviews to make them as comprehensive and educational as possible. And if you're watching this video and you're not already subscribed, I would sure appreciate the follow as I continue to grow as a shoe reviewer. Alright, let's kick this thing off with some disclaimers and disclosures. So I did receive this shoe for free for the purpose of review through Mount to Coast. That being said, Mount to Coast does not get to see this video or any videos that I have produced beforehand, and these thoughts are entirely my own. And if anyone has ever doubted that, I do want to say that I actually did a first thoughts video on this shoe on Instagram, was only about a minute long, and Mount to Coast immediately emailed me afterwards with some feedback telling me that they believed my opinion was a little bit off on some of the aspects of the shoe. Of course, I'm not going to let that affect what I say today, and will be truthful and honest as always in my review of the shoe. So let's start off with the intended use of the shoe. The Mount to Coast R1 is designed as an ultra running or ultra racing shoe. For those that are unfamiliar with that terminology, that means that this shoe is supposed to be made to cover distances from 50K all the way up to 200 plus miles in one go. As such, that is how I will be evaluating this shoe. Now, right off the bat, I just want to say that the idea of an ultra running shoe is somewhat interesting to me because everyone's feet are a little bit different and everyone's feet have different preferences. That does not mean that the shoe is not durable enough to go for 200 straight miles. And again, we'll talk about this, but I do think that it's an interesting marketing positioning, and as we talk about that intended usage of the shoe, when you market yourself as an ultra racing shoe, you're going to get compared against shoes that are worn during ultra racing. And personally, again, I don't know that this is the shoe. In fact, I know that this is not the shoe that I would personally choose, but that does not make it a bad shoe. So let's break it down. Now the shoe comes in at a price point of $160, which if this shoe were to be used as a race shoe that's going to last for 200 plus miles in one go, is honestly fairly reasonable, because when you look at most racing shoes are going to cost in the $200+ range. From a spec standpoint, the shoe comes in at 8.5 ounces in a men's size 9, which is on the lighter weight side of shoes, which is pretty awesome. The heel has a 35mm stack height, while the toe is a 27 for an 8mm overall heel-to-toe drop. The fit of the shoe overall is fairly accommodating. It has somewhat of an anatomical toe box shape, so you are going to let the toes be able to kind of breathe a little bit, and that is intentional, again, with the idea that your feet are likely going to swell during an ultra marathon. I wouldn't say that the toe box fits like an extra wide though, and the shoe overall fits accommodating, but again, I would not call it a wide fitting shoe for the most part. Lengthwise, these definitely fit true to size, so I wear a 10.5, and I did not have any issues with my toes hitting the end of the shoe or toe box volume whatsoever. From an upper standpoint, you have a double layer jacquard mesh, which kind of creates this level of heat dissipation and breathability. A lot of the times you think with a double layer it's going to add more heat, but it actually, that middle layer or lack of middle layer in between the two, again, is what helps that kind of breathe a little bit more. From a durability standpoint, the upper is pretty robust. I don't think that you're going to be able to tear this. So again, thinking of being able to last for hundreds of miles, I think that yes, 100% this shoe is going to be in one piece at the end of that. And there's some nice strategic cushion throughout the shoe, specifically in the heel. You kind of have this heel counter, which is solid, but you get some nice cushion to keep your heel locked in. And then you have a slightly or lightly cushioned tongue, which is that same breathable dual layer jacquard mesh, and it's really nice overall. Now, something really unique about the shoe, obviously, is this dual lacing system. At first, when I saw it, I thought, hey, that's kind of gimmicky, but honestly, it does really help with that lockdown in the midfoot, because you can really cinch down here up top while letting your toes and letting the forefoot kind of breathe a little bit more. And the fact that you can adjust this one with the speed lacing system on the go, again, is just more helpful to where if your feet starts to swell, you can loosen that really quickly and not have to worry about having to stop and fully lace and retie your shoes. So some of these attentions to detail, I think, are really nice when it comes to into that ultra racing. From a lockdown standpoint, kind of like I talked about, you can really cater your lockdown, and so I did not shift around in the shoe whatsoever. It was a very comfortable overall ride in the upper, and then you do have a fully gusseted tongue, which keeps that tongue in place, which, as you know, if you've ever had kind of floppy tongues moving around in the shoe, can be very annoying. Now, moving to the midsole of the shoe. The midsole is a PIBA-based foam, but it is tuned a little bit differently than most PIBA foams that I've tried. If you think of the traditional like Zoom X foam or Power Run PB from Saucony, it tends to be very, very squishy, very bouncy, compress a lot, and the PIBA foam in this shoe tends to be a little bit firmer and just provide a little bit more structure. Now, I don't think that that is a bad thing, and I want to be clear on that. It actually gives you a lot of really good, almost ground feel to the shoe, and the shoe feels really, really nice underfoot as you run. There's no plate or stiffening agent within the shoe. Instead, they go with what is called this Go Flow suspension, which is supposedly mimics something done in race cars, but it does give you some support underfoot. Now, I tried this shoe on gravel to kind of see how it would feel overall, and you do feel pressure underneath because, again, there's no rock plate or there is no carbon fiber plate or anything in the shoe, but the foam is thick enough where you're not going to feel like you're getting stabbed in the bottom of your feet as you run on varying terrains, because usually when you're running ultras, even a road ultra, you may end up on some type of gravel or fire road at some point. Now, I said that the foam was kind of tuned a little bit more unique, and one of the things that they do that is unique to them is they do a nitrogen injected PIBA. Now, when I think nitrogen injected, I think more of Brooks running. Brooks does a lot of nitrogen injected foams, but they usually use a TPU foam or something like that. And so to have a nitrogen injected PIBA foam does create an interesting sensation. It's not the most responsive shoe in the world, but it does actually remind me of kind of like the Saucony Kinvara, where you actually can do some pickups in that shoe, and actually, like, I would run a 5K in the Kinvara. The difference is that the geometry of the shoe causes it to be a little bit more controlled, a little bit slower, very, very stable. So you're not really trying to, like, you don't get the feel of wanting to explode out of the shoe and propel yourself forward so much as the shoe does a good job of kind of easing you into that easy to moderate pace. So even though it is a PIBA foam, I think it feels best at easy running paces, again, which with ultra running, especially like 100 milers, 200 milers, you fall into an easy pace because you have to kind of be in your forever pace. So I think the tuning of the foam actually matches the pace that you're going to want to run in it. In fact, they say that this shoe is best used in that 6-minute to 11-minute mile range. Now, from a stability standpoint, because of that wide base and that foam that is not overly squishy but is soft and comfortable, it is a very stable shoe without being a stability shoe. Overall, I think various types of runners, even those who maybe overpronate a little bit, would be fairly comfortable in this shoe. You may just want to get some additional insole or something to give you a little bit more support. Now, last thing on the cushioning overall, because again, this is literally advertised and marketed as an ultra running shoe. For me, I would want a softer and thicker overall foam if I were to run 200 miles in one go. I mean, I would probably want that again, even for like the marathon distance. And so while just because the shoe can withstand 200 miles does not mean that every runner should be trying to run their long runs in this shoe, because this shoe really feels more like a standard daily trainer than anything, which is not a bad thing. And at $160, it's not like crazy out of the range of a standard daily trainer. A lot of them are closer to that like 140, 150 range. So sure, it's a little bit higher, but there are premium elements to the shoe. So I do think that this shoe does well as the materials are high quality and the foam is comfortable and the shoe feels nice underfoot. But again, I'm evaluating the shoe as an ultra running shoe, so the midsole to me is not where it needs to be if you're trying to run even, again, 13 plus miles. Now, from an outsole perspective, this is another area where I am a little bit confused just because they went with a fairly minimal outsole overall. That being said, I do have 50 or so miles on these shoes and the outsole is showing little to no wear, so it's probably like an extra durable or a durabrasion rubber of some sort, but it feels pretty minimal. But again, no real signs of wear. I did find that the shoe was also very, very comfortable even on wet surfaces. It is a grippy rubber. It does a good job and holds up fairly well from what I can tell. Now, as far as who this shoe is for, this is kind of, again, where I somewhat have beef with the marketing of the shoe and how the shoe actually performs. There's no doubt in my mind that people can take the shoe as ultra runners and take it the distance. And in fact, they have a couple of athletes who have done that, who have done incredible feats in this shoe. I would argue that those athletes could have done the same in pretty much any shoe so long as it was accommodating in fit. The shoe kind of fits like an ultra with like the anatomical toe shape or a topo, but it has that 8mm heel to toe drop, which is a little bit more traditional or closer to traditional of a drop in that heel. And so I do think pretty much anyone could run in this shoe and have a good time and be comfortable overall. I kind of like this shoe as well, just for casual use. I like the white and black look. I also like to wear this with the adjustable lacing if I'm traveling. They're very, very comfortable. But I would never personally run an ultra marathon in these, and I don't think that the majority of the population would. So who is this shoe for? Well, if it was marketed as a daily trainer, then most people. But being marketed as an ultra running shoe, I would say it's really only for the top like 1% of runners. But going back to that price point at $160, it is going to be fairly affordable for most running shoe budgets. And so in that sense, if you're looking for a daily trainer that is accommodating, that does have additional lacing options, that, you know, gives some nice support underfoot, and you're not wanting to go with one of the main brands out there right now, then I do think Mount to Coast is doing some really cool things, and it could end up being a really good shoe option for you. My guess though is they would probably be used more for daily easy runs than ultra running. Now, from a comparison standpoint, when we look at a couple of other shoes, this is the Topo Spectre 2, and you can see that the toe box is a little bit wider, a little bit more anatomical or toe shaped or foot shaped than the Mount to Coast R1. So there are certainly other shoes out there with a drop. This is a 5mm heel to toe drop, while this is an 8, that are going to fit wide or fit and be more accommodating for different foot shapes. One thing I will say is like the underfoot feel of the shoe feels a lot like the Atreyu base model or the Saucony Kinvara 14, last year's model, and probably this year's model, because I don't think they changed a lot, which I frankly love both of those shoes. I think that this is a really solid daily shoe that you could do some strides in. You could do, you know, maybe like a tempo run if it's a little bit shorter in this shoe, but it's not going to be like the most explosive or most poppy off the ground, because it's not really built for that, but it's built for some nice ground feel and some really nice miles. I think that the fit of this shoe is going to be a lot more accommodating. So if you liked the Saucony Kinvara, but you want something a little bit wider, or even the base model from Atreyu, you wanted something a little bit wider, this is going to be a better fit, though I think those other two shoes are a little bit bouncier, a little bit more responsive overall. Now, I also don't run in a ton of wide toe box shoes, so I'd be curious for those who have tried kind of some of the other shoes from Topo, maybe like the Ultrafly, or with Ultra, maybe some of their other lower stack kind of daily models, how they would compare overall. But for the most part, Mount to Coast definitely has something unique here, and it's a pretty cool shoe overall. Now, just some final thoughts to kind of wrap this video up. Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with this shoe. I have a problem with how the shoe was marketed, and I have a problem with how aggressively the shoe was marketed. I understand why that is the case. This is a brand new brand. They are out of Hong Kong. They're going up against the powerhouses in the running world. But it seems like every content creator, every running creator on the planet was advertising these shoes. Many of them did paid ads about these shoes, talking about how, you know, people ran 200 milers in these shoes and how they've done amazing things in these shoes. And while all of that is true, I don't think it's representative of what the shoe actually is for the general public, which in my mind is a solid, really solid daily trainer. I genuinely enjoyed my miles in the shoe. They did take a run or two to kind of ease up. The first run was a little bit rough, but once that foam kind of set in a little bit, the shoe is really accommodating. It's really comfortable. It's got some great ground feel. It's a unique feel that doesn't exist a whole lot, as a lot of people are going so max cushion nowadays. So if you like that somewhat stripped down feel of a shoe, like, you're going to like this shoe. But the way that a shoe either wins or fails is oftentimes in how it's advertised and how it's marketed. And I think that this shoe, again, I've said it a million times in this review, you guys are probably tired of it, I just don't see how this could be an ultra running shoe for the large majority of runners and the general population. In fact, I do think it's interesting that they may be the only running company out there that I'm aware of that is specifically producing shoes and calling them ultra running shoes, because shoe preference is so different. And so at the 160 price point, it doesn't really make sense as a race shoe either. So it may just be a matter of retooling the marketing and positioning, because if they had sent me this as a daily trainer, I probably would have had a totally different tone in this review. So there you go. That's the Mount to Coast R1. Solid shoe overall. Probably not an ultra running shoe for most people. But with that, I'll leave you guys with a question, which is, what shoe would you take if you had to run 50 plus miles on the roads, and why? Thanks, everybody.